The observation deck of the Royal Starship Britannia stretched across 300 meters of reinforced crystalline glass, offering a view of the Andromeda Gateway that took the breath away from even the most seasoned space travelers. Princess Charlotte stood at the center viewport, her royal blue uniform adorned with the insignia of the Commonwealth Fleet, watching the swirling vortex of quantum energy that connected humanity's furthest colonies to Earth. She was 17 standard years old, though her eyes held the weight of someone who had seen much more. As third in line to the throne of the United Earth Commonwealth, Charlotte had spent most of her young life aboard military vessels, learning the arts of diplomacy and warfare that would one day be expected of her. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her posture spoke of years of military discipline. Behind her, the usual retinue of guards maintained their positions. Captain Marcus Webb led the Royal Guard detail assigned to her protection, a veteran of the Proxima Wars with cybernetic enhancements that allowed him to process threats faster than any unaugmented human. His team of 12 guards were positioned at strategic points around the observation deck, their powered armor gleaming under the soft lighting. The Britannia was on a diplomatic mission to the outer colonies, carrying not just Princess Charlotte, but also Camilla, the Queen Consort, who was in her private quarters preparing for the upcoming negotiations with the Tau Ceti Alliance. It was supposed to be a routine journey, the kind that happened dozens of times each year. And what nobody knew was that this journey would become a turning point in human history. Tom Richardson sat in the lower crew quarters, his fingers dancing across a holographic display as he reviewed engineering reports. He was 22, lanky, with unruly brown hair that never quite stayed in regulation style no matter how much gel he applied. His mother, Camilla, had married into royalty 5 years ago, but Tom had refused all titles and privileges, instead enlisting in the Commonwealth Engineering Corps and earning his position aboard the Britannia through merit alone. Most of the crew didn't even know he was the Queen Consort's son. He preferred it that way. Being judged on his work rather than his family connections felt honest, real. He wore the same gray engineering uniform as everyone else, bore the same rank insignia, and pulled the same 12-hour shifts, keeping the massive Starship systems running. His communicator chirped, "Richardson, we need you in Section 7. Plasma conduit showing irregular fluctuations." Tom grabbed his toolkit and headed into the corridor. The Britannia was a city in space, housing over 15,000 crew and passengers. Its corridors stretched for kilometers, a maze of passages connecting engineering bays, living quarters, military installations, and the royal sections where he rarely ventured. Section 7 was near the observation deck, and as Tom worked his way through the access tunnels, he could hear the faint hum of the ship's massive engines thrumming through the walls. The plasma conduit issue turned out to be a simple calibration error, something he fixed in 20 minutes. But as he was packing up his tools, he heard raised voices from the main corridor. Curiosity got the better of him. Tom stepped out of the access hatch and found himself near the entrance to the observation deck. 2 civilians, a man and a woman in expensive travel clothes, were arguing with one of the royal guards. "We paid for premium passage," the man was saying, his face red with anger. "That includes access to all public areas of the ship." The guard, a young corporal, shook his head firmly. "The observation deck is temporarily restricted. Royal family member present. You can access it in 2 hours." "This is ridiculous," the woman snapped. "We're not some commoners to be pushed around." Tom almost walked away. It wasn't his problem. But then he noticed something that made his blood run cold, and the man's hand was sliding into his coat pocket, and Tom's engineering training had taught him to recognize the subtle electromagnetic signature of a charged weapon. Time seemed to slow down. Tom's mind raced through the possibilities. If he called out, the man might panic and fire. If he did nothing, someone could die. The Royal Guard was looking at the woman, not the man, his attention divided. Tom made his choice. He lunged forward, covering the 3 meters between him and the armed man in less than a second. His shoulder slammed into the man's side just as the plasma pistol cleared the pocket. The weapon discharged, a bolt of superheated energy that scorched the ceiling instead of hitting the guard. Alarm screamed to life. The Royal Guard reacted instantly, his enhanced reflexes bringing his rifle up even as Tom and the assailant crashed to the floor. More guards poured into the corridor from the observation deck, their weapons trained on the struggling figures. "Freeze!" Captain Webb's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Nobody move!" Tom felt hands grab him, pulling him roughly away from the man he'd tackled. His arms were yanked behind his back, mag restraints clicking into place around his wrists. The plasma pistol clattered across the floor, retrieved quickly by one of the guards. "Clear the area," Webb ordered. "Lock down this section. Get the princess to a secure location." Tom's face was pressed against the cold deck plating as guards swarmed around him. He tried to speak, to explain, but a knee in his back forced the air from his lungs. Through the crowd of armored guards, Tom caught a glimpse of Princess Charlotte being escorted away, her face pale but composed. For just a moment, their eyes met, and he saw confusion in her gaze before she was whisked around a corner. "On your feet," a guard commanded, hauling Tom upright. His engineering uniform was torn at the shoulder, and his cheek throbbed where it had hit the deck. Captain Webb approached, his cybernetic eye glowing faintly as it scanned Tom from head to toe. "Identify yourself." "Engineering Technician Second Class Tom Richardson," Tom managed, though his ribs ached. "Serial number Echo 7294 Charlie." "What were you doing here?" "Fixing a plasma conduit. I saw the man reach for a weapon. I was trying to stop him." Webb's expression didn't change. "You attacked a civilian passenger and caused a discharge of an illegal weapon in a secure corridor. You're aware that's a court-martial offense?" "I was trying to prevent an assassination attempt." "That's for the investigation to determine." Webb nodded to his guards. "Take him to the brig. Full security protocols. Nobody speaks to him without my authorization." As they dragged him away, Tom saw medical personnel arriving to treat the would-be assassin, who was unconscious from where his head had struck the wall during the tackle. The woman who'd been with him was on her knees, hands on her head, tears streaming down her face as she babbled about not knowing anything about a weapon. The brig was a sterile white room with a force field instead of bars. They removed Tom's mag restraints only after sealing him inside, and then the guards left without another word. He sat on the hard bench that served as a bed and tried to make sense of what had just happened. He'd potentially saved lives, maybe even prevented the assassination of a princess. But from the way Captain Webb had looked at him, Tom realized with growing dread that nobody saw it that way. They saw an unknown engineering tech who had appeared at exactly the wrong moment, who had caused a weapon to discharge near a member of the royal family. Hours passed. Tom counted the seconds by watching the chronometer display on the wall. No one came. No one spoke to him. The silence was worse than any interrogation. Finally, the force field deactivated, and Captain Webb entered, accompanied by 2 guards and a woman in the black uniform of internal security. So she had sharp features and eyes that seemed to catalog everything about Tom in a single glance. "Mr. Richardson," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "I'm Commander Sarah Chen, Internal Security. I need to ask you some questions about today's incident." Tom stood, trying to ignore the ache in his muscles. "I'll tell you whatever you need to know." "Sit down," Webb ordered. Tom sat. Chen activated a holographic recorder. "For the record, this interview is being conducted aboard the Royal Starship Britannia regarding incident designation Alpha 77. Present are Commander Sarah Chen, Captain Marcus Webb, and Engineering Technician Tom Richardson." She turned to Tom. "You are not currently under arrest, but you are a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Tell me, in your own words, what happened?" Tom recounted the events, starting from the moment he'd received the call about the plasma conduit. He described seeing the argument, noticing the electromagnetic signature, making the decision to intervene. Chen listened without interruption, her expression neutral. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You have training in threat recognition? Engineering training includes electromagnetic signature identification. Plasma weapons have a distinctive EM field when they're charged. How long have you been aboard the Britannia? 8 months. And in that time, have you ever been near the observation deck before? Tom saw where this was going. A few times. Maintenance calls don't follow a schedule based on what areas are convenient. Have you ever attempted to interact with Princess Charlotte? No, ma'am. I've never even seen her up close before today. Chen glanced at Webb, some unspoken communication passing between them. Mr. Richardson, are you aware that the man you tackled, Marcus Venn, is a registered security consultant with Level 3 clearance? Tom's stomach dropped. What? The weapon he was carrying was licensed and legal. He'd declared it when he boarded. He was reaching for it because he'd identified a suspicious reading on his personal scanner and was preparing to investigate. That's not possible. He was drawing on the guard. I saw— What you saw, Webb interrupted, was a trained security professional doing his job. Until you assaulted him and caused his weapon to discharge in a corridor where the third in line to the throne was present. Tom felt the world tilting. No, that's not what happened. The way he moved, the angle he was drawing. Have you ever met Marcus Venn before today? No. Have you had any contact with anti-monarchy groups? What? No, I don't— Tom stopped himself, realizing how every answer seemed to dig the hole deeper. I want to speak to legal counsel. Chen nodded. That's your right. But I should inform you that the situation is more complicated than you might think. She pulled up a holographic display showing surveillance footage. Tom watched himself lunge at Venn, saw the plasma bolt score the ceiling, saw the chaos that followed. But what made his blood run cold was the timestamp. The footage began exactly 2 seconds before he'd moved. There was no video of Venn drawing the weapon, no proof of what Tom had seen. The surveillance system experienced a brief malfunction, Chen said quietly. Very brief, just long enough to miss the critical moment. Convenient, wouldn't you say? You think I sabotaged the surveillance? I'm an engineering tech, not an electronics specialist. We're exploring all possibilities. Chen deactivated the hologram. Here's what we know for certain. You appeared in a restricted area at the exact moment an armed man was present near a princess. A weapon discharged. The surveillance footage is incomplete. And you have connections that make this situation very delicate. Tom stared at her. What connections? Webb answered, his voice hard. We know who your mother is, Richardson. We know that you're Queen Consort Camilla's son. We know that you've been using a different surname and hiding your identity aboard this ship, which raises the question, what else have you been hiding? The pieces fell into place. They thought he was part of some conspiracy. Maybe they thought he was trying to harm Charlotte to improve his own family's position in the succession. Maybe they thought he was working with separatist groups. Whatever they thought, Tom realized with horror that his attempt to save lives had painted him as a potential threat to the crown. I need to speak to my mother, Tom said quietly. The Queen Consort is being informed of the situation, Chen replied. But understand, Mr. Richardson, that she cannot interfere with an official investigation. If anything, her relationship to you makes this more complicated, not less. They left him alone again. Tom sat in the sterile cell and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. He'd spent 5 years avoiding the spotlight, avoiding the privileges and complications that came with being royalty adjacent. He'd earned his position, proven himself on merit, and now all of that was crumbling because he'd tried to do the right thing. The chronometer showed that 6 hours had passed since the incident. Somewhere on the ship, His mother was probably being questioned about him, about his loyalty, about whether she'd known what he was planning. The thought made him sick. Another hour passed before the force field deactivated again. This time, it was just Webb, alone. "On your feet, Richardson." Tom stood, wary. Webb's expression was unreadable. "Commander Chen is reviewing the evidence," Webb said. But I wanted to speak to you privately. You claim you saw Ven drawing a weapon with intent to harm my guard. You claim you were trying to prevent an attack." "Yes, sir. I've reviewed your service record. 8 months aboard the Britannia. Exemplary performance reviews. Multiple commendations for quick thinking in emergency situations. No disciplinary actions. You could have leveraged your family connection for an officer's commission, but you chose to enlist as a technician instead." Webb's cybernetic eye whirred softly. "Why?" "Because I wanted to earn my place, not have it handed to me." "Do you understand the position you're in? Even if we prove you had no malicious intent, you caused a security incident near a royal family member. At minimum, you're looking at a dishonorable discharge. At worst, if Chen finds evidence of conspiracy, you'll spend the rest of your life in a penal colony." Tom met his gaze steadily. "I know what I saw, Captain. I know what I did. If believing the evidence of my own eyes means throwing away my career, then I guess that's what happens." For the first time, something like respect flickered across Webb's face. "I'm going to tell you something that doesn't leave this room. That malfunction in the surveillance system. It wasn't an accident. Someone hacked it. Someone with sophisticated knowledge of our security protocols. We're investigating whether Ven was really a legitimate security consultant or part of a larger plot." Tom's breath caught. "You believe me?" "I'm saying the evidence is unclear, but here's what I know for certain. In about 2 hours, a word of this incident is going to reach the public networks. The Queen Consort's son involved in a security breach near a princess. The media will tear you apart. They'll make you into a villain or a hero or whatever narrative sells the most advertising. Your life, as you knew it, is over." The words hit like physical blows. Tom had seen what the media did to people in the royal family's orbit. Every mistake magnified, every choice questioned, privacy stripped away until there was nothing left but the story they wanted to tell. "There might be another option," Webb continued. "Commander Chen is thorough, but she's also pragmatic. If you cooperate fully with the investigation, if you provide everything we need to understand what really happened, we might be able to keep this contained. No public charges. Quiet transfer to another posting. Your mother's reputation protected. In exchange for what? The truth. All of it. Starting with why you really tackled Marcus Ven." Tom closed his eyes, replaying those crucial seconds in his mind. The electromagnetic signature, the angle of Ven's draw, the calculation he'd made in a fraction of a second that someone was about to die. "I told you the truth," Tom said, opening his eyes. "I saw a threat. I responded. That's all there is." Webb studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then I hope you're right, Richardson. Because if you're wrong, a lot of people are going to suffer, including people you care about." The captain left, and Tom was alone again with his thoughts and the steady hum of the ship's engines. Somewhere on this vessel, his mother was dealing with the fallout of his actions. Somewhere, the Princess Charlotte was being briefed on the man who'd caused chaos near her position. Somewhere, investigators were pulling apart every moment of his life, looking for evidence of conspiracy. Tom lay back on the hard bench and stared at the ceiling. He'd spent 5 years building a life based on his own merits, proving he was more than just someone's son. And now, in one moment of instinct and courage, that life had been torn away. But he couldn't bring himself to regret it. If he'd stood by and done nothing, someone might have died. Even if no one believed him, even if the evidence said he was wrong, Tom knew what he'd seen. The question was whether the truth would be enough to save him from what came next. The chronometer ticked forward. Outside his cell, the Britannia continued its journey through the stars, and carrying secrets and lies and the weight of consequences not yet fully understood. And in the silence of the brig, Tom Richardson waited to learn whether he'd saved a life or destroyed his own. The questioning continued for 3 more days. Commander Chen and her team went through every aspect of Tom's life aboard the Britannia with surgical precision. They analyzed his duty logs, interviewed his colleagues, examined his personal communications, and reconstructed every moment of his 8 months aboard the ship. Through it all, Tom maintained his story, answering every question with steady honesty, even as exhaustion made his vision blur. On the 4th day, something changed. Chen arrived at the brig with a data pad and an expression Tom couldn't quite read. She sat across from him in the small interview room, and silent for a long moment before speaking. "We've completed our analysis of the electromagnetic signatures in the corridor at the time of the incident," she said. "Our sensors recorded everything, even though the visual surveillance was compromised. According to the data, there were actually 2 charged plasma weapons in that corridor, not 1. Tom leaned forward, his heart pounding. 2. Marcus Venn's registered weapon shows a standard charge pattern. But there was a second source, something with a modified frequency that our initial scans missed. Someone else was armed, someone who knew how to mask their weapon's signature from standard detection. The woman with him? Margaret Venn, his wife. But when we searched her, we found nothing. No weapon, no residue, nothing to suggest she'd been armed." Chen's fingers danced across the data pad, which should have been impossible, except our hull sensors detected a small mass ejection from one of the maintenance airlocks approximately 90 seconds after the incident. Something was jettisoned into space. Tom felt vindication surge through him, followed immediately by a new fear. If there was a second weapon, if they were trying to hurt someone. "We don't know what they were planning," Chen interrupted. "Marcus Venn remains unconscious. He suffered a severe head trauma when you tackled him. The doctors say he might never wake up, and his wife is invoking her right to silence on advice of counsel." The weight of that settled over Tom like a shroud. A man might die because of his actions, even if that man had been part of some plot, and the reality of it was heavy. "What happens now?" Tom asked. "Now things get complicated." Chen set down the data pad. "The evidence suggests you were right. There was a threat. You responded appropriately given the information you had. But the palace has concerns about how this appears publicly. The Queen Consort's son involved in a violent incident near a princess, questions about security protocols, suggestions that our screening procedures failed to detect a potential assassination plot. It's a public relations nightmare." "So I'm the sacrifice? Take the blame publicly to avoid difficult questions?" "No one wants that," Chen said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But there are realities you need to understand. The Commonwealth is dealing with increasing unrest in the outer colonies. There are separatist movements, terrorist cells, groups who would love nothing more than to prove that the royal family isn't safe even aboard their own ships. If we admit that 2 potential assassins made it past our security, if we show that weakness, it emboldens them." Tom laughed bitterly. "So the truth is inconvenient." "The truth is complicated," Chen corrected. "And that's where you have to make a choice, Mr. Richardson. We can release the full findings of our investigation. You'll be exonerated, but the media firestorm will be enormous. Your face will be on every news feed in human space. Your connection to the Queen Consort will be public knowledge. Every decision you make for the rest of your life will be scrutinized. And more importantly, the security failures that allowed this to happen will be exposed, potentially encouraging more attacks. Or we present a modified version. You remain a concerned crew member who noticed something suspicious and acted with excessive force but good intentions. Minor disciplinary action, transfer to another posting. The matter kept quiet. The investigation into the Vens continues in secret, and we shore up our security without broadcasting our vulnerabilities to the galaxy. Tom stood and walked to the force field that marked the boundary of his cell. Beyond it, he could see a guard standing at attention, another person whose job was to protect the royal family at any cost. "What does my mother think about this?" he asked. "The Queen Consort has been advised of both options. She's left the decision to you." Of course she had. Camilla had always given Tom the freedom to choose his own path, even when those choices hurt her. When he'd enlisted instead of accepting a royal title, she'd supported him. When he'd asked to use his father's surname instead of hers, she'd understood. And now, when his choice would affect not just him but her reputation and the monarchy itself, she was still letting him decide. Tom turned back to Chen. "If I agree to the quiet option, what guarantees do I have that you'll actually find out what the Vens were planning? How do I know this won't just be swept under the rug?" "You don't," Chen said bluntly. "You have to trust that we want the same thing you do, the truth and justice. But I can tell you this. Captain Webb has been assigned to lead the investigation personally. He's requesting additional resources from Fleet Intelligence. This isn't going away. I want regular updates on the investigation, not just about the Vens, but about any security improvements made because of what happened. And I want to know if there are more threats to the royal family." Chen raised an eyebrow. "You're not in a position to make demands, Mr. Richardson." "Then we do it the public way," Tom said calmly. "Full investigation, full disclosure. I'll take my chances with the media." A smile ghosted across Chen's face. "You have more spine than I expected. All right, weekly briefings on the investigation provided they don't compromise operational security. But understand that some information may be classified above your clearance level." "I can live with that." "There's one more thing," Chen said. "Princess Charlotte has requested to speak with you." That surprised Tom. "Or why?" "She didn't say. But it's not a request we can deny. She wants to meet you before any decisions are finalized about your future." Chen stood. "I'll arrange it for tomorrow. In the meantime, you should think carefully about what you're going to say. The princess is young, but she's smart, and she has her own ideas about how this situation should be resolved." After Chen left, Tom tried to imagine what Princess Charlotte might want. An apology? An explanation? The chance to evaluate whether he was a threat? He'd caught that brief glimpse of her during the chaos, seen the confusion in her eyes. Now he would face her properly, and the thought made him more nervous than any interrogation. The next morning, guards escorted Tom to a small conference room in the diplomatic section of the ship. And it was the first time he'd been out of the brig in days, and the change of scenery was jarring. The conference room had actual windows showing the stars sliding past, real furniture instead of prison fixtures, the scent of recycled air that hadn't been filtered through a cell's life support. Princess Charlotte was already there, standing by the window with her hands clasped behind her back. She wore her uniform, but somehow it looked less formal on her than on the parade ground soldiers Tom had seen. She turned as he entered, and her guards took positions by the door. "Leave us," she said. The guards hesitated. "Your Highness, protocol requires—" "I know what protocol requires, Lieutenant. I'm modifying it. Wait outside. If I need you, I'll call." The guards withdrew reluctantly, leaving Tom alone with the third in line to the throne. She studied him with eyes that were sharp and measuring, and Tom found himself standing straighter without conscious thought. "Engineering Technician Second Class Tom Richardson," Charlotte said. "Or should I call you Thomas Millbrook Richardson, stepson to the Queen Consort?" "Tom is fine, Your Highness. Sit." She gestured to a chair. Tom sat. Charlotte remained standing, which Tom recognized as a power play. She was establishing that this was her space, her terms. "I've read Commander Chen's reports, all of them. The official ones and the classified ones. I know what you did and why you did it. Then you know I was just trying to help. I know you made a split-second decision under pressure with incomplete information, and that decision potentially saved lives, including possibly mine. Charlotte moved away from the window. I also know that you've been hiding your identity aboard this ship for 8 months. Why? Tom met her gaze steadily. Because I wanted to be judged on my own merits, not because of who my mother married. Noble sentiment, naive execution. Charlotte sat across from him. Do you have any idea how many security reviews your presence aboard this ship should have triggered? How many protocols were bypassed because you were using an incomplete name? The security failures that allowed the Vens to get as far as they did started with holes in our personnel vetting, and you were one of those holes. The accusation stung because it was partially true. Tom had requested to use his father's surname, had downplayed his connection to the Queen Consort, and the bureaucracy had accommodated him without fully updating the security profiles. I never meant to compromise security, Tom said. Intent doesn't matter. Results do. Charlotte leaned back in her chair. Commander Chen wants to handle this quietly. Captain Webb wants you transferred off the ship. My security detail wants you court-martialed as an example. And Fleet Command wants to bury the whole incident to avoid difficult questions. What do you want, Your Highness? Charlotte was quiet for a moment. I want to understand something. When you saw what you thought was a threat, you didn't call for the guards. You didn't trigger an alarm. You physically attacked someone you believed was armed and dangerous. Why? Tom thought back to that moment in the corridor. There wasn't time. If I'd been wrong, worst case would have been me tackling an angry passenger. If I'd been right and done nothing, someone could have died. You were willing to risk your career, potentially your life, for someone you didn't even know? Not someone, people, plural, the guard, any bystanders you. Tom hesitated, then added, That's what humans do, isn't it? We protect each other. We take risks for strangers because it's the right thing to do. Something shifted in Charlotte's expression. You believe that? That humanity's defining trait is protecting others? I've seen it in action. Engineering bays where someone makes a mistake that could cost lives, and a dozen people rush to fix it instead of running. Emergency situations where strangers work together like they've trained together for years. Maybe I'm idealistic, but yeah, I think when it counts, humans show up for each other. Charlotte stood and walked back to the window. The Ven's security consultant credentials were legitimate, but their background before joining the security firm is murky. Fleet Intelligence is investigating links to the Sons of Terra, a separatist group that wants to break the outer colonies away from Earth's governance. If they were part of a plot, you disrupted it. If they weren't, if this was just a terrible coincidence and poor judgment on your part, then you assaulted an innocent man who may never wake up. I know, Tom said quietly. But you'd do it again, wouldn't you? Even knowing the consequences? Yes. Charlotte turned from the window. Commander Chen offered you a quiet resolution. Transfer, minor discipline, the matter buried. Are you going to accept? I don't know yet, Tom admitted. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks the truth should come out. Oh, whatever the cost. The truth. Charlotte's laugh was bitter. The truth is complicated and messy and rarely makes anyone happy. I've lived my entire life watching truth get shaped into narrative, watching reality get filtered through public relations departments and media consultants. Do you know what the truth is about this incident, Tom? The truth is that our security failed. The truth is that an engineering technician noticed a threat that trained guards missed. The truth is that the royal family isn't as safe as everyone believes, and those truths are dangerous. So we should lie? We should be strategic about what we reveal and when. Charlotte returned to her seat. I'm going to tell you what I've decided, and then you can make your choice. And I'm recommending to Fleet Command that you receive a commendation for quick thinking under pressure, not publicly, but in your service record. I'm also recommending that you be reassigned to the Royal Engineering Corps with appropriate security clearance and training. Your connection to the Queen Consort will be officially acknowledged. Security protocols updated accordingly. Tom stared at her. Why? Because you did the right thing, and I won't see you punished for that. But also because this incident exposed gaps in how we handle personnel with royal connections. You're not the first person who's tried to serve anonymously, and you won't be the last. We need better protocols. Charlotte's expression softened slightly. And because my grandmother spoke to me, the Queen herself. She said that in all her years on the throne, the people she trusted most weren't the ones who told her what she wanted to hear. They were the ones who acted with integrity even when it cost them. The Queen knows about this? Tom, everyone knows about this. The incident was contained from public knowledge, but within the military and royal household, you're the subject of considerable debate. Some think you're a hero, some think you're a liability, most think you're a complication they'd rather not deal with. And what do you think? Charlotte considered him for a long moment. I think you're someone who saw a threat and responded, who put others before yourself, who's willing to face consequences for doing what you believed was right. I think those are qualities we need more of, not less, but I also think you're naive about how the world works, about the cost of truth and the value of discretion. So you want me to take the quiet option. I want you to take the smart option, which happens to also be the quiet option. Accept the commendation, accept the reassignment, work within the system to make things better. Because the alternative is you become a symbol, a story, a cautionary tale, or an inspiration depending on who's telling it. And symbols don't get to have normal lives. Tom thought about his 8 months aboard the Britannia, the satisfaction of fixing problems, the camaraderie with fellow crew members who knew him only as a competent engineer. That life was gone regardless of what he chose. The question was, what came next? If I accept, what happens to the investigation into the Vens? Captain Webb continues it with full resources. If there was a plot, and we expose it and bring those responsible to justice, but we do it carefully, without tipping our hand to whoever else might be involved. And if more threats emerge, then we deal with them. With better protocols, better training, and yes, with people like you who notice what others miss. Charlotte stood, extending her hand. What do you say, Tom? Are you willing to work within the system, or do you need to fight it? Tom rose and shook her hand. Her grip was firm, her gaze direct. In her eyes, he saw not just a princess, but someone who'd spent her life navigating the complicated intersection of duty, truth, and pragmatism. I'll accept your recommendation, Tom said, but I want to stay involved in improving security protocols. If my situation exposed gaps, I want to help fix them. Done. Captain Webb will be in touch about incorporating your perspective into the review process. Charlotte released his hand. One more thing. My stepmother, your mother, has been worried sick about you. She wanted to visit, but protocol and Chen's investigation made it complicated. That restriction is lifted. Expect her to arrive within the hour. Thank you, Your Highness. Charlotte moved toward the door, then paused. Tom, what you did in that corridor, that instinct to protect others at cost to yourself, that's not just commendable. It's human. In the best sense of the word, whatever happens next, don't lose that. She left, and Tom was alone with his thoughts and the stars beyond the window. 20 minutes later, the door opened again, and his mother rushed in. Camilla looked tired, her usual composure frayed at the edges. She pulled Tom into a hug without a word, and he felt her shaking slightly. They stayed like that for a long moment before she pulled back, her hands on his shoulders, studying his face. Are you all right? She asked. I am now. She guided him to a chair, sitting beside him and taking his hand. I'm sorry I couldn't come sooner. They said the investigation required isolation, that any contact with me could compromise things. I've been going mad with worry. I'm okay, Mum. Really? Charlotte told me about her recommendation. Are you sure you want to accept? You fought so hard to build an identity separate from royal connections, and now this pulls you right back into that world. Tom squeezed her hand. I don't think I ever really escaped it. I was just pretending I could. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I can do more good working within the system than hiding from it. You've always had such a good heart, Camilla said softly. Even as a child, you couldn't stand seeing anyone hurt or treated unfairly. But Tom, that same heart is going to get you into trouble in the world Charlotte lives in. The palace, the military, the politics of it all. It's not kind to people who act on instinct instead of calculation. Charlotte said something similar, that I'm naive. You're not naive. You're good. Those are different things. Camilla brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, a gesture from his childhood. When I married into royalty, I knew there would be scrutiny, expectations, complications. I accepted that for myself, but I never wanted it to touch you. That's why I supported your decision to enlist under your father's name, to build your own life. And now this incident has dragged you into the spotlight anyway. It's not your fault, isn't it? If I weren't queen consort, this would be a simple disciplinary matter. But because of who I am, it becomes a political calculation. Tom turned to face her fully. Mum, listen to me. I'm not a child anymore. I'm 22 years old. I made my choice in that corridor, and I'll make this choice now. Not because of you, not because of Charlotte or the Queen or anyone else. Because it's what I think is right. Camilla's eyes shone with tears she was too disciplined to let fall. When did you get so grown up? Around the same time you married a royal and showed me how to handle impossible situations with grace. She laughed, a sound halfway between joy and sorrow. I'm not sure I handled anything with grace, and I stumbled through it, making mistakes and hoping for the best. Then I come by my approach honestly. They talked for another hour about the investigation, about Tom's future in the Royal Engineering Corps, about the small details of life that had been put on hold during the crisis. Camilla told him about the diplomatic negotiations with the Tau Ceti alliance, about Charlotte's increasing interest in military affairs, about the latest scandal involving a distant cousin. Normal conversation, the kind they used to have before everything became complicated. When she finally left, Tom felt more centered than he had in days. The path forward was clear, even if it wasn't the one he'd imagined for himself. The next week passed in a blur of debriefings, medical evaluations, and administrative procedures. Tom's transfer to the Royal Engineering Corps was expedited, his security clearance upgraded, his service record updated with a commendation that most of the military would never see. Captain Webb called him to a final meeting before the transfer became official. They met in Webb's office, a space that reflected the captain's personality, Spartan, efficient, with only a few personal touches. A photo of Webb with his old unit from the Proxima Wars. A piece of shrapnel mounted on the wall, presumably from a battle that had meaning to him. Sit, Webb said, gesturing to a chair. He poured 2 glasses of something amber from a bottle that looked expensive. Drink? I'm on duty, sir. Not anymore. As of 0800 this morning, you're officially transferred. This is a private conversation between 2 men who've both made difficult choices in the line of duty. Tom accepted the glass. The liquid burned going down, but left a pleasant warmth. I owe you an apology, Webb said, surprising Tom. When this incident first happened, I made assumptions about you. Your sudden appearance, your connection to the Queen Consort, the convenient surveillance malfunction. It looked like a conspiracy. I treated you as a threat instead of someone trying to help. You were doing your job, protecting the princess. I was following protocol without thinking critically about the evidence in front of me. That's a failure. Webb refilled both glasses. The Vens are confirmed as Sons of Terra operatives. Marcus Venn woke up 2 days ago and, under interrogation, he revealed that they were conducting surveillance for a larger operation. They weren't planning to attack that day, but they were gathering intelligence about Princess Charlotte's routines, her guard rotations, weak points in our security. So there was a threat. There was, and you disrupted it before they could complete their reconnaissance. That plasma pistol Margaret Venn jettisoned into space? We recovered it from our trajectory analysis and sent a retrieval drone. It was a custom weapon, highly illegal, capable of penetrating our standard armor. If they'd used it, my guards wouldn't have stood a chance. Tom felt the weight of that revelation. How many more of them are out there? That's what we're working to determine. Fleet Intelligence has launched a full investigation into the Sons of Terra. We've already identified and arrested 3 other operatives who'd infiltrated various royal vessels and installations. Your actions likely saved lives beyond just those in that corridor. I was just doing what seemed right. Webb smiled slightly. That's exactly why Princess Charlotte recommended you for the Royal Engineering Corps. We need people who trust their instincts, who act decisively when it matters. The military is full of people who follow orders and procedure. Those people are important. But we also need people who can think independently, who can see beyond the protocol to the reality underneath. Is that why you requested to supervise my training personally? You heard about that? Commander Chen mentioned it might happen. Webb nodded. The Royal Engineering Corps isn't like regular engineering. You'll be working on classified projects, experimental technology, systems that are never supposed to fail because failure means people die. It's high pressure, high stakes, and absolutely unforgiving. But if you can handle it, you'll be at the forefront of keeping humanity safe. When do I start? 2 weeks. That gives you time to visit Earth, see your family, prepare for the transition. After that, you'll be assigned to the Sovereign Class Development Program at Luna Station. 6 months of intensive training, then deployment to wherever you're needed most. They finished their drinks in companionable silence. As Tom stood to leave, Webb extended his hand. Welcome to the Royal Engineering Corps, Lieutenant Richardson. Tom looked down at his uniform, which still showed his old rank. I haven't been promoted. Sir. The promotion comes with the transfer. Congratulations, Lieutenant. You earned it. The rank insignia arrived the next day, along with formal orders assigning Tom to Luna Station. He spent his remaining time aboard the Britannia, saying goodbye to the friends he'd made in the regular engineering corps, people who'd known him as just another technician. Some knew about the incident by now, rumors spreading despite official secrecy, but they treated him the same, with the camaraderie of shared work and mutual respect. On his last day aboard the Britannia, Tom found himself back at the observation deck, the same spot where everything had changed. The Andromeda Gateway was behind them now, replaced by the blue-white glow of Earth growing larger in the view screen. Princess Charlotte joined him, and appearing beside him without announcement or fanfare. Her guards maintained a discreet distance. Saying goodbye to the ship? She asked. Something like that? This place changed my life. For better or worse. Tom considered that. Both, I think. I lost the anonymity I valued. But I found a purpose I didn't know I was looking for. Charlotte stood beside him in silence for a moment. I'm going to tell you something that stays between us. When you tackled Marcus Venn, when all of that chaos erupted, do you know what my first thought was? That you were in danger? That I was grateful someone noticed. That in all the protocols and security measures and trained professionals around me, someone actually paid attention and acted. She turned to him. That's what humanity is, Tom. Not the grand gestures or the heroic speeches. It's someone seeing a problem and fixing it because it needs fixing. It's choosing to act even when you're scared or uncertain. You're not what I expected a princess to be like, Tom said. Charlotte laughed. Good. I work hard to exceed expectations. She grew serious again. Thank you, Tom, for what you did, for showing that the system, for all its flaws, still has room for people who care more about doing right than doing what's expected. What will you do now, after this mission ends? Continue learning, continue preparing for whatever the future holds, and maybe push for some of those security reforms you helped identify. I've been thinking about what you said about humans showing up for each other. I want to build a commonwealth where that instinct is supported and encouraged. I'm not buried under protocol and bureaucracy. That's a big goal for someone third in line to the throne. Maybe, but I have time, and I have examples like you to remind me why it matters. They watched Earth grow larger for a while longer. Then Charlotte excused herself with a small smile and a nod. Tom remained at the window, thinking about the strange path that had led him here. From engineering tech to lieutenant, from anonymous crew member to someone whose actions had implications for the entire royal family. The transport shuttle that would take him to Earth launched the next morning. As the Britannia grew smaller in the rear view screen, Tom thought about the future waiting for him. Luna Station, advanced training, classified projects that would push his skills to their limits. It was everything he'd never planned for and exactly what he needed. His communicator chirped with a message from his mother. Proud of you. Can't wait to see you planetside. Dinner at the house, your choice of menu. Tom smiled and typed a reply. Anything but ship rations. See you soon. The shuttle accelerated toward Earth, toward a future full of uncertainties and possibilities. Behind him, the Britannia continued its journey through the stars, carrying its own secrets and stories. And in the wake of one moment's decision, in the space between what was planned and what had happened, Tom Richardson found himself exactly where he needed to be. Not because of who his mother had married, not because of royal connections or family privilege, but because he'd seen someone in danger and acted, because he'd trusted his instincts and been willing to face the consequences. In the end, that was the most human thing of all. And in the vast darkness of space, as humanity spread across the stars, it was those human moments that mattered most. The small choices that rippled outward, the individual acts of courage that became something larger, the quiet heroism of people who simply did what needed to be done. Tom looked out at the stars and smiled. Whatever came next, he would face it the same way he'd faced everything else, with open eyes, a willing heart, and the determination to make a difference where he could. The transport shuttle carried him toward Earth, toward family and rest and preparation for the challenges ahead. And in the silence of the journey, Tom Richardson finally understood what it meant to find your place in the universe. Not by hiding who you were, but by embracing it. Not by avoiding complications, but by working through them. Not by seeking anonymity, but by earning respect. He was ready for what came next. And somewhere in the cold vastness of space, the Britannia sailed on, its crew unaware of how much had changed because one person had trusted their instincts and acted. But that was all right. History wasn't made by people seeking recognition. It was made by people doing the right thing, whether anyone noticed or not. And Tom Richardson, lieutenant in the Royal Engineering Corps, stepson to the Queen Consort, and the man who'd disrupted a terrorist surveillance operation with nothing but quick thinking and courage, was just getting started.